So when I started to think about this issue of the project, and actually it's really very present in my mind throughout all of my work and thinking, but specifically for this presentation, I kind of went back to some thinking that I've been doing for the last year or so on what the contemporary project is or could be today in general. So I think we're in a somewhat unique moment in architectural history and in understanding sort of contemporary architecture's place within that history, because there are no heroes or sort of movements that we are tying ourselves into anymore. So in the 1950s or 60s, you might have aligned yourself with the Bauhaus or with IMP or with any number of different figures and different themes. We find ourselves in a somewhat more tenuous position where we have to kind of create our own story in our own project. I think this affords us a tremendous opportunity to see architecture as a medium that allows for a great deal of flexibility and fluidity. We're given the opportunity to kind of situate ourselves within a family tree that we construct for ourselves. So Sam Jacob has been writing about this consistently, and I've been trying to kind of engage in that writing through my own work, or at least reflect upon it tangentially. So in reflecting upon the Charles Jenks diagram of the movements of architecture and the different projects that developed over the 20th century, he reflects that everything is sort of flattened out into an indistinguishable pool. There's no longer this sort of alignment within a specific moment or movement. You have to kind of develop your own sort of small puddle of influence from all of the things that are sort of flowing around you. For me, this pool of kind of input has been very much related to the place of Colorado itself. So I've been here for about 5 years. Most of my work is all situated within this context. And understanding the monumentality and the overwhelming sort of scale of Colorado is central to this. You guys have perspective on that from at least riding in on the train or on the highway from the airport, where the city itself is completely dwarfed by the mountains behind them. If you were lucky to go visit the Air Force Academy or some of the other buildings that are sort of nestled up against the Front Range, you have an idea of the scale and scope of that landscape. It's something that you can't ever really truly escape. So for me, the work is a constant meditation on that monumentality, as well as a sort of a riff on a specific body of work. So rather than sort of view, and Heather's diagram at the beginning of her presentation I think is central to this, rather than view each project as its own sort of one-off piece, I actually view them all together as one project that are rowing towards something. The work is all developed through the scale of domesticity for the most part. And you'll start to see that I'm kind of trying to pull together influences and references from contemporary culture as well as history, and develop my own family tree for the creation of this architecture within this context. I think we're going to hear a little bit about Doug Darden, who's a Denver hero here shortly. In a way, I think I align myself to him in a way, not very directly to Doug. I think collage was a big piece of sort of understanding disparate references that come together in order to make a project. For me, those references are a little bit more like your sister's cousin's uncle's roommate. So they don't really necessarily create a direct comparative sort of appearance so much as give the impression of a relation. So just to quickly go through two projects to illustrate this point. This was the first project that I took on when I moved to Colorado. It's a single family home up in the mountains near Buena Vista. And it's truly a meditation on the courtyard house and on the use of structure as a means to tectonically resolve monumentality. So it's actually two courtyard houses stacked on top of one another, using a relative weight between the two sort of houses. And then using this sort of tectonic language of brick and wood in order to understand that outcome. So the house itself sits, it's not built, but it would have sat in a large field near cattle with windbreaks sort of surrounding it. And the client really wanted and demanded to have privacy within their own domain, but also provide these sort of cabins for family coming to visit. So the floor plan resolves itself in such a way where the ground floor is this sort of wrapped courtyard building, and then the upper level is a series of small maisonettes that are tied together. So that monumentality is sort of showing up, not necessarily as an issue of scale, but more in terms of resolving through primary geometry, singular elevational moments and sort of connections from one space to the next. Now then, the second project I'll show you guys quickly is the most recent project that I've undertaken, also unbuilt, this time situated in Denver. It's an accessory dwelling unit or a mother-in-law's house in the back of another property. And really it's a meditation on scale and verticalism within a sort of constrained urban environment, taking into account the kind of weight and gravity of that tenuous position of being up above the city and sort of dealing with a scale of domesticity that is very cramped and constrained. So the house itself sits on a 12-foot by 12-foot footprint and is built entirely of load-bearing brick. It's 3.5 stories tall and is characterized by the use of the material brick itself in resolving a sort of tectonic connection from one face or wall, sorry, that's my timer, to the next. So we see that the use of that material at a micro scale is conveying the kind of position of the house as something that is permanent but also unstable in some respect. So these projects, I think, hopefully point towards position in terms of projecting your work, not as something that must be directly related to a movement or a group of architects operating around you, but can actually exist independently within a body of work that has its own character and nature from one piece to the next. So for me, the project is a declaration of independence. That sounds cheesy, but declaration of independence from sort of any influences coming from outside, and an attempt and an effort to sort of create my own family tree and my own sort of context within which to work. So, thank you.